Okay, thank you for being present. Presentation. My name is Trienekens, like Remigio said, from Wageningen University and Research, and I'm giving a presentation about the results of Fields Task 1.5 scenario analysis. The aim of 1.5 is to develop scenarios for agriculture, food industry and forestry sectors to help guiding vocational education and training development, together with the results of the focus group discussions and the survey that were just presented by Louis. And we specify for sustainable production, bioeconomy, digitalization and business models. And business models reflect management, entrepreneurship and soft skills. We have two steps. First is analysis of trends in agriculture and the food industry and forestry, and the second is development of scenarios. And we developed 3 scenarios. We did this by with the help of many partners in the project, and we did literature study, we did analyze policy reports, and expert consultation helped us to come with these results. The studies were performed on EU level and on the level of 7 selected countries that you see below in this slide. Let's look at some of the results of the trend analysis, the trends that we identified. Selection, because in the report there's much more. Because of time reasons we cannot present all, of course. Some important trends in agriculture. The trend towards more ecological production, let's say more biopesticides, more organic fertilizers, also mixed farming. Slowly by slowly we go into that direction, you could say. The challenges we have with emissions, the second point. 27% of all GHG emissions are from agriculture worldwide. Changes in farm structure is important business model trends. We lost 50%, almost 50% of our farms in the last 2 decades in Europe. And also a trend to short food supply chains, specifically in countries like Austria, Italy, France, but also in other countries you see that development. Then precision farming is an important upcoming trend, and supply chain information systems and new customer relationships. Think of social media and online sales. Then if we go to the food industry, some selected trends from the report are more attention to co- and byproducts production and circular production, which should relate to that. New proteins like algae, insects, plant-based proteins, clean and green labels to better communicate with customers and consumers, and also more attention to new diets because of nutrition and health reasons in particular. Further looking at the food supply chain monitoring, think of safety, but also increasingly of quality of food, and industry 4.0 with robotics, 3D printing, etc. technology that we see in development. Although the food industry is lagging behind from other sectors regarding technology development. If we then look at forestry, impact of climate change, it's quite important with large-scale disturbances, droughts and heat waves, but also impact on tree species and biomass characteristics. Illegal logging is an important trend that we see throughout Europe's scattered forest ownership, you could say. More attention to biomass production, ecosystem services, including water and air purification and climate regulation. And then looking at the market, also increasing demands for wood, also for construction, and urban green spaces like tiny forests, etc. Well, these are some selected trends, as I said, and what we see are most are related to climate change, to optimal use of resources, or to new customer relationships. And these are generic trends for Europe, for EU countries. Now, there are quite some differences between the countries because we did for these 7 countries specific trend analysis. And these gave some more specified pictures of trends. And just to give some examples. For 3 countries, Netherlands, Ireland and Spain, for example, in the sustainable production area in the Netherlands, we have intensive agri-production. We are in the middle of a nitrogen emission crisis and deteriorating biodiversity. And also because of that pressure on the animal sector, because the animal sector is one of the main producers of these emissions. Then if you look at the trends in Ireland, quite differently, most agriculture on grassland and increasing grass-based dairy. It's more sustainable as it seems and improving biodiversity. And then quite different again, trends that are important in Spain is pressure on water use. Louis already reflected on that as well. But also developers in technology and irrigation and selection of climate resilient crops. And also the desertification of southern European countries. Some other examples of differences. Business models. In the Netherlands, we have a strong trend towards multifunctional farms. More than 40% of all farms have activities outside agriculture, like sales of products, tourism, energy production, but also care, healthcare or youth care. In the Netherlands, in Ireland, we have quite an opposite trend in the number of farms. There's a stable number of farms and the further move to dairy production. And then in Spain, an important trend is the increase of organic farming and increased consumer interaction, the short chains. And so we see on a country level, we have the generic trends, but we also see these differences between countries, and these were just again a few examples. Now from these trends, we go to the scenario analysis based on the trends, of course. And we aim at a limited number of scenarios, representing different roadmaps for sustainability, bioeconomy, digitalization, and business models, the 4 areas that we focus on. We want to develop 3 scenarios. One of the scenarios represents furthering on historical socioeconomic patterns, an established path scenario. So if in policy, on the policy level, not much happens in the near future, and also in the technology development, not that much will happen, then we have this established path scenarios, just moving on as we go, the middle of the road scenario, you could say. The 2 other scenarios seem to be best cover or elements of the project. These are sustainable paths as a scenario and high-tech paths. And sustainable path covers the sustainability and bioeconomy area, and the high-tech path covers digitalization and parts of the bioeconomy area as well. And the business model area, in fact, shows how businesses follow the trends in the different scenarios. Now, to give a little bit more explanation about the 2 scenarios, sustainable path and high-tech path, the sustainable path scenario reflects issues like environmental awareness by consumers and policymakers, an active public sector with a lot of public investments, and inclusiveness, more looking at equality on a global scale. Contrary, or a different scenario, high-tech scenario reflects faith in technology, a strong role of the private sector in investments, globalization and free trade. So these are some key differences. There are more than you have to look into the report. But these give, I think, an impression of the 2 different scenarios. Well, the scenarios are described through narratives, and the trends identified in the study that I just presented before are the elements of the narratives. 3 scenarios, and I present for the different areas that we focus on. So first on sustainability and bioeconomy. 3 scenarios: sustainable paths, established paths, and high-tech paths. If you look at sustainable paths, some key issues again, selection, because of time reasons, of course. On sustainability, focus on plant-based production. So less meat, but also related to local food, animal welfare, and these kind of things. Diversified cropping systems, small and medium-sized enterprise, mixed systems as well. Agroforestry, combination of agriculture and forestry business, and ecosystem services. And then the bioeconomy area, some key issues are decarbonized energy markets and increasing consumption of wood. Now then, if we look at the high-tech scenario, the focus is on healthy personalized diets, linking to a healthy lifestyle. Technology-intensive large-scale production in agriculture, food industry, and forestry. And then looking at bioeconomy there, high-tech circular production systems and technology-driven bio-based industry next to developments in novel foods, functional foods, etc. And then the middle of the road scenario, consumer keeps his focus on cost, taste, and convenience, like most consumers do nowadays. Intensive agriculture production, moving on, focus on resource efficiency. And the bioeconomy, fossil fuel-based energy market, and biomass supply by forest. Again, here a selection of some issues. Now looking at the scenarios for digitalization and business models. The precision farming, small and medium-sized enterprise focusing on sustainable and diverse production, and Industry 4.0, also focusing on small and medium-sized enterprises next to the larger companies, and precision forestry also on the medium-sized companies. Business models then that we will see are short and regional chains, some decentralized markets that we have in that scenario, mixed multinationals and medium-sized food industries for international flows of products, international and regional flows of products, and multifunctional forestry business, ecosystem services, tourism, etc. Again, with high-tech, precision farm, but now for large-scale production, integration of systems across the food supply chain, so heavily supported by information systems and a high level of transparency, and Industry 4.0 and precision forestry. And then in the business models, large specialized corporate farms, as opposite to the sustainable path scenarios, but also developments like joint ventures between food and health industry for personalized and healthy food, and integration in international value chains. In the middle of the road, established path scenario. Just like now, precision farming varies across sectors and regions and countries. Focus on large-scale farms and forestry business remains. And business models, global markets, long chains, a lot of attention to food and safety and quality systems there. Multinationals focus on cost efficiency in global chains and focus again on large businesses. Now, again, these are scenarios developed for the EU as a whole. And as said, this is a selection of issues in the report to find a more extensive information. Now, we did these scenario studies also on country level for the 7 countries that we selected. And of course, I cannot show you all these country level scenario studies, but I give you one example of the bioeconomy area of France. And then just a few examples in this. So for every country, we had a slide on bioeconomy, on business models, sustainability and digitalization. So 7 countries, that's 28 of these slides. They're very interesting slides, I must say. And a lot of work for all the country teams that did this work on these reports. Just some examples on sustainable paths, the French bioeconomy. 100% of the waste produced in the agri-food industry are transformed into highly added value, etc. on sustainable path. On the high-tech part, we focus on new byproducts emerging from a novel specialty agri-food industry in which new technology approaches are present. Another example, agroforestry. Agroforestry and small-scale forestry, including so-called tiny forests, are an integral part of the rural and urban landscape. And here, in the high-tech part, forestry and agriculture are functioning separately, etc. Food industry, for the sustainable parts again, has moved strongly to circular production supported by new technologies. And here we see the French food industry is moving swiftly to smart factory solutions by using recycling of resources. It's based on economic incentives and legal demands. So quite interesting country studies besides the European scenarios that we have. Important to see, I think, what we learned from this study as well is that there are quite some differences between countries. And I want to give two further examples before concluding this presentation on differences in two of the areas that we study. The first is on the sustainability area, and here is just one indicator, the organic farming area. The European Union, the EU Green Deal wants to achieve 25% organic farming area in 2030. And then if we look at this picture, countries like Austria, Sweden, Austria even past 25%. And then you have countries like Italy and Switzerland and other countries that follow. Lagging behind countries like Germany, France, Spain, still not doing too bad, and Spain is catching up nowadays. But then all these countries that really lag behind, like the Netherlands, Ireland, although they have sustainable farming, the grassland farming, but also Eastern European countries. So we see quite some differences between countries, which maybe affects also the need for specific skills, specifically because we're talking about the year 2030, and that's already in 9 years. Another example of difference between countries, different starting points, is an indicator on the digitalization area, just one indicator again, the rural broadband coverage in 2019. And there we see that countries like France and Spain, Eastern Europe, Poland, but also parts of Italy, Scandinavia, they have a low rural broadband coverage, at least the megabits that they use in making this picture. I think it's 100 megabits speed that they use. But you see again quite some differences. And broadband, rural broadband is important for digitalization of the agricultural sector and forestry sector. So also here are some different starting points. Concluding. There are different implications of trends and scenarios throughout Europe, although there are commonalities, quite some commonalities, but also quite some differences. Trend and scenario studies support decision-making on training, education, development. So we think that these studies can certainly be used to identify which are the most important skill needs next to the focus group discussion, the survey of each one. We did a skill analysis also in this task, but well, because of time reasons, I couldn't present that. But for every scenario, the country teams identified the most important skills given the issues that they identified. Trends show difference between EU countries, as we saw. Also, the starting position of countries is different, as we just saw on the last two slides, implying that scenarios should also be differently implemented. Sustainability, bioeconomy, digitalization, also business models. Implying that besides commonalities and skill needs that we all have in Europe, there are also differences between skill and training needs. And to end, this will also challenge, I think, the EU Green Deal objectives. But we like challenges, so let's see. This was it. Thank you for your attention.